Hundreds of migrant children are being moved from a Border Patrol facility where they were held in conditions described as squalid and unsanitary. We reported last week that doctors and attorneys who visited the facility in Clint, Texas, said the children did not have proper food, water, or sanitation in a facility that's run by the U.S. government. So for more on this, we are joined now by Omar Villafranca, who's in Mission, Texas, where migrant families often cross the border. So it seems, Omar, as if all this media attention is resulting in some change, hopefully for the better. We mentioned that it was a group of initially lawyers and doctors that visited this location last week. Tell us again how they described the conditions that the children were living in.
Well, we talked to one attorney who basically described the conditions that she saw in there as unsanitary, and she said this does not need to be going on in the U.S. It should not. She's talking about children who were still wearing clothes that they crossed over the border with that were stained with body fluids. They also had mucus on them. Many of them didn't have access to soap or a toothbrush. They couldn't even wash their hands. Many hadn't taken a bath in days, and a lot of them had actually been going to bed hungry, and that's what kept them interviewing more and more kids. And it's almost like a little bit of a Lord of the Flies situation there. She said that you had 11 and 12-year-olds, older kids, that were basically tasked with taking care of younger children who were there just because there were not enough guards. So it was very eye-opening for her.
Yeah, it sounds like it. What do we know about these kids? Who are they? How did they end up there? How did they end up there, rather?
Well, from what we understand, they're categorized as unaccompanied minors, and we don't exactly know all of their nationalities. We know that most of them are coming from what they call the Triangle. So you're talking Guatemala, Honduras, El Salvador. They're coming up from that area. They're unaccompanied minors. And when they're unaccompanied minors, they're supposed to only be in custody for about 3 days before they're transferred to another government agency that knows how to deal with children. But a lot of times, the attorneys told us, the children told them, they had been there for weeks, many of them sleeping on the floor, on the concrete. They were given a wool blanket, and their choice was to either use it as a mat under them and be cold, or sleep on the hard concrete and put it over them to keep warm.
You know, Omar, in this country, there are so many regulations surrounding facilities that take care of children, daycare centers and nursery schools and so on. I mean, they're one of the most regulated sort of sectors in this country. When I heard about the conditions that these children were living under, I thought there must be some mandatory minimum, regulations in place. And this surely can't be it. What you're describing, is this against the law, and how is the Trump administration defending itself?
There are some attorneys who say what these children are having to live through in these conditions, that it is against the law. And it's interesting because there was a DOJ lawyer who went before the Ninth Circuit, and her name was Sarah Fabian. And when some of the judges were asking her about conditions there, about just having access to soap and toothpaste and being able to wash their hands, they assumed that this was a basic need that was covered, and her response was that a lot of times maybe it's not. And that, of course, took the judges, they were shocked by hearing a DOJ attorney actually say that. And her argument was that a lot of times these children are there for short stays. Well, these short stays are not happening, and a lot of times these children are being held there for weeks, sometimes in their own filth in the clothes. And some of the conditions that we're hearing about are eye-opening. And the frustrating part as reporters is that we have asked for access, but we cannot get inside there. Short of trespassing and breaking the law to try to get a look and talk to these kids, we cannot get in there and see for our own eyes and report. We have to basically rely on organizations who are legally allowed to go in and have them report back to us.
Yeah, you would think if the administration feels that what it's doing in terms of these children is up to par, then having journalists in the facility should not really be a problem. But now we have learned that children are being moved out of this facility, hopefully to better conditions. But what do we know about where they're going?
Well, what we know is they're going to be no longer in Customs and Border Patrol care. They're going to be now in ORR, Office of Refugee Resettlement Care, which is a specialized division that is meant to take care of children, check on them more, make sure they're fed, know how to communicate better with children. Because the way you treat a child and the way you treat an adult is two different ways. Problem is, we don't know where they are going. We now know who the guardians will be, what division will be the guardians, but we don't know what conditions they're going to be living in now. And interesting note, there was roughly 300 children who were moved out of that Clint facility. And there was also about roughly 50 who are still, who are not transferred. We don't know what's going to happen to them. And the kids who are transferred, we don't know where they are going. So while a lot of people are grasping on like, oh good, they're no longer going to be at this facility, we don't know where they're going now. We don't know what that alternative looks like.
Yeah, it makes me wonder why it took an outside group, going in there, reporting to the media about it to get the ball rolling, but at least some change is happening. Omar, thank you very much.
Thank you, Anne Marie.